The Kansas City Chiefs have done it. They have traded for a wide receiver. They have, in fact, traded for wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans, and I've got some thoughts on that real quick, guys. If you like or appreciate the work that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, so consider sticking around by hitting the subscribe button. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs did acquire wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th-round pick that can appreciate to a 4th-round pick, though we do not have the designations on Howe at this time, furthering the mystery around this trade. We don't know the salary cap implications either. Now, here's the thing. Just for a little bit of context, the Kansas City Chiefs traded a 6th-round pick for Mecole Hardman and a 7th-round pick. So what are you looking at when you're talking about a 5th-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins? I have to say this. I don't care. This is going to be a move that is going to make the offense better. Appreciably better, immediately. Does he know Andy Reid's playbook? No, I don't care. He is good enough, he is experienced enough to be able to at least stand in the huddle and be told where to go. And I'll get into this a little bit later in the video when I share some thoughts on exactly how this trade is going to impact the offense this season. He's very good at finding holes in the zone. So that's one thing that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to find themselves. The too high safety look in the NFL right now is what is making football sometimes almost unbearable to watch. At a lot of zone going on. And if you have Travis Kelce, who is very good at beating zone, and you add in DeAndre Hopkins, who is very good at beating zone. And by the way, DeAndre Hopkins, with his catching ability, is good at beating man coverage too. I don't care what the stats say per se. You're also going to have to look at quarterbacks involved, and Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to do things that Will Levis simply is not. That none of the quarterbacks with whom DeAndre Hopkins have played were capable of doing. Now, the implications for this offense are immediate. And it is going to be, once we get to the stats portion of this video, something that is going to make a whole lot of sense almost immediately. Now, who is DeAndre Hopkins? Not that anyone really needs this question answered, but we'll talk a little bit about it anyhow. 6'1", 218 pounds. He's 32 years old. In the 2013 draft, he was selected round 1, pick 27. He has 33 3/8-inch arms, 10-inch hands, absolutely massive. Plays into the catching ability. He ran at the time a 4.57 40. He had a 1.62 10-yard split. Neither of those numbers probably particularly accurate at this point in DeAndre Hopkins' career. Doesn't matter. DeAndre Hopkins is very good at maybe not utilizing speed, but utilizing angles. And he's very good at utilizing something that is going to get Twitter absolutely in a rage at some point this season, if not constantly. And we will get to that as well in a moment. He had a 36-inch vertical, a 9'7" broad jump, and did 15 reps with the bench press. Not particularly important for a wide receiver, but it tells you that he did want to compete. Looking at his career stats, one thing that's going to pop out pretty quick is the fact that he has 8 seasons with over 100 targets. Many of those seasons, 6, with over 150 targets. Absolutely massive. He was the guy for his offenses for a very long time. It might be confusing that a guy who has 12,528 yards in his career, many seasons over the 1,000-yard mark, only has 79 touchdowns. But I would encourage you to look at the teams for whom he played. You're not looking at a guy who has had a whole lot of premier talent around him. during this time. So offensive drives will often stall out in the red zone, etc. If you have when you are playing defense in the red zone, you use the boundaries as an extra defender so you can crowd out a target at a time, right? You are using, if you double cover someone, you basically have 3 players on them, including the boundary. So that makes things more difficult at the goal line, in the red zone, for someone like DeAndre Hopkins, who does not have a whole lot of talent around him at times in his career. But still, multiple seasons with over 100 catches, we're not going to get that this season. Right now, this season, 2024, he has 15 receptions on 21 targets for 173 yards. Now, that is maybe not all that impressive, but it's important to note that the Kansas City Chiefs do not have a whole lot of wide receiver power, a whole lot of stats accumulating on their, if I can pull this up real quick, on their roster either. This is not setting up to be a premier season for DeAndre Hopkins in DeAndre Hopkins' own sort of, by his own standards. But for the Kansas City Chiefs right now, I should have had this pulled up, this would put him right under Noah Gray. Rashee Rice leads the team still in receiving yards with 288, Travis Kelce 245, Xavier Worthy with 198, Noah Gray with 185. You would then slot in DeAndre Hopkins 173 right under that. But again, he's not playing with premier talent. And this season, he does have a 4.8% drop rate, which is the second highest of his career. For perspective, however, Kadarius Toney had a 13.2% in 2023 with the Kansas City Chiefs, and during his time with the Giants that season, his drop rate was 33%. Travis Kelce normally ends up somewhere in the 5% range. Also, worth noting here, he has a 72.2 rating when targeted this season, which is a career low. However, Will Levis, his quarterback, has a 70.7 rating on the season, meaning he is making his quarterback better. The Kansas City Chiefs do not have a whole lot of wide receivers making their quarterback better. His average depth of target this season, 10.2 yards. He's basically always above 10 yards on his ADOT, average depth of target. In fact, he has been over 10 yards every season except for 2020, where I think it was either 8.9 or 9.2, something like that. And for a little bit of perspective there, Rashee Rice had an ADOT of 5.2 last season. Rashee Rice had an ADOT of 5.2 this season. Juju Smith-Schuster has an ADOT of 6.5, and Xavier Worthy has an ADOT of 11.6. So he's being targeted roughly in the same area of the field that is Xavier Worthy. And I think part of that is something we'll get into a little bit later. There's not a whole lot of run after the catch with DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't think that's what Patrick Mahomes and this offense need. Interestingly here, we're going to get into some all-time numbers, not because we have to, but because it is interesting. He has 79 career touchdowns. That ties him for 33rd all-time. Pretty good, right? But maybe not quite Hall of Fame numbers for touchdowns. But if he has 10 more touchdowns, putting him at 89, he jumps all the way up into the top 20, tying him with Jimmy Graham at 89. The bold names are still... Is Jimmy Graham still active? The bold names are still active. Anyway, that is something to... I don't think he's going to have 10 touchdowns, but if he has 5, that still puts him on the precipice of the top 20. That ties him for 22nd. And I'm going to get into why this is interesting to look at in a moment. As far as yards are concerned, he is 23rd overall with or 12,528. A 1,000-yard season would only move him up a few spots, but again, that would be into the top 20 at the 17th spot, right above Torrey Holt and right below Julio Jones. Now, why do I mention this? Well, guys, it is, if DeAndre Hopkins plays past this season, it is very, very likely that he could end up in the Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame. If DeAndre Hopkins wins a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs this season, guys, it might be likely that he has some portion of his dedication in the Hall of Fame to the Kansas City Chiefs. Very interesting as far as the legacy of this dynasty is concerned. Cashing in older players for Super Bowls is one of the things that made the Patriots dynasty a little bit more likable, right? You didn't really like the Patriots, but man, Junior Seau really did deserve a ring, didn't he? You maybe didn't like the Patriots, but if they could have gotten Randy Moss a ring, that would have been pretty cool, right? All of these things factor into sort of ranking dynasties and things like that. Moving on, some thoughts that I have on the acquisition itself. The Twitter Ref Watch Mafia is going to absolutely love this move because DeAndre Hopkins gets away with more offensive pass interference than anyone since Michael Irvin. He's so good, and he's so good because he knows where the referee is, and he is able to catch the ball with one hand. Well, that means he can swat away your hand with the other one. That means he can take your hand by the wrist and move it away with his second hand, and he does this, and he does this very good. He's also, like I said earlier, very, very good at finding the open space in the zone. This is where he's going to help the Kansas City Chiefs. The one stat that I am most interested in here with DeAndre Hopkins is this far right column here. That's why I went all the way over here for this. First downs. I think that what the role of DeAndre Hopkins will be in this offense is simply to move the chains. He's not going to have to score touchdowns. He's not going to have to run after the catch. He's not going to have to make particularly big plays. He's not going to have to be the explosive guy. What his main role in this offense, in my opinion, will be is, hey, make this catch and get a first down. We need that. We need the first downs. The fits and starts with which this offense operates has been a problem, frankly, since Tyreek Hill was here. Patrick Mahomes got too fixated on trying to take everything all at once. Now, the fits and starts on this offense seem to be ineptitude at the wide receiver position. And that is that's how an offense stalls out. Not being able to get ahead of the sticks. The Chiefs have done pretty well staying ahead of the sticks in the past two games. That is not, in my opinion, how they started the season. They started much more inefficiently. The Bengals game, I thought, was a pretty good example of inefficiencies with their offense. He's not a yards after catch guy. He had less than half of Rashee Rice's yards after catch, but this is where we see the depth of target go up. So he's not being counted on to run after the catch, but he is being counted on to make the catch, and he can make the catch. The last thing on this section of the video, DeAndre Hopkins is not washed. DeAndre Hopkins is not having a very good season. DeAndre Hopkins may be feeling 32 years old while catching passes from Will Levis in a situation that is not particularly promising in Tennessee. Still, he played the team game. Still, he said, "I'm happy right here," knowing, undoubtedly, that he was going to be traded, Knowing undoubtedly that calls were going to come, he still played along with the organization to that extent. How important is a Super Bowl to DeAndre Hopkins? I've never heard him talk about it. I'm not an expert in DeAndre Hopkins, but I've never heard him talk about it. There are some guys that that guy wants a ring. I don't know with DeAndre Hopkins. He said he was going to chase rings when he signed after he was a free agent last time, but then he went and signed with the Titans. So I don't know if he is serious about that talk. I don't know, but it does seem that he is a team player. Now, there is a little bit of an issue here. The Kansas City Chiefs have a lot of issues with wide receivers being injured. The Kansas City Chiefs just traded for a guy that apparently has an MCL injury. How serious is this? Well, we have an article titled, "Should Kansas City Chiefs fans be worried about wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins' MCL injury?" Here's what we know from Charles Goldman at A to Z Sports, and it says, if you are unaware, the 32-year-old Hopkins has been playing through an MCL injury in the 2024 season. He missed training camp with what was described as an MCL strain. Later, Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com reported that Hopkins actually tore his MCL during a practice in late July. As it turns out, this injury was actually considered the best possible outcome for Hopkins. MCL injury, a blessing in disguise for new Chiefs wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. A to Z Sports Nashville's Austin Stanley and Easton Freeze had an opportunity to sit down with Dr. Colin Looney of the Bone and Joint Institute of Tennessee shortly after learning of Hopkins' MCL tear. Looney described an isolated MCL injury as a favorable diagnosis compared to other knee injuries. Why? Because he says that most of those injuries heal on their own. Skipping forward in the article, on average, a grade 1 is about a 5 to 7 day injury, Dr. Looney said. Like, I'll hold an athlete out about a week with a grade 1, a football player. And then a grade 2 is about a 2 to 4 week injury. And then a grade 3, that's about 6 to 8 weeks in season injury. The fact that Hopkins has played in every game for the Titans this season might complicate these timelines. But there's no denying he's played in each game. He's had a catch in each game. He's coming off back-to-back games with the Titans where he played a season high in offensive snaps, 39. It all suggests that he's healthy enough and not being impacted negatively by the injury. Really, the only negative impact has been that he's missed a few practices to receive extra rest. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs will have an issue giving him extra rest. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs will necessarily have to play him for 39 snaps a game. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs could get away with playing him somewhere in the 20 to 25 snap range. He doesn't have to be a stud here. He doesn't have to be a star here. He has to get a few receptions per game to keep the offense moving. Should he be able to cash in 3 to 7 receptions every game, that could be the difference that it makes in order to keep the offense moving, keep the scores up. The interesting part is when you start looking at what he's doing when he's not being targeted. Are the Chiefs acquiring him in order to draw interest away from Xavier Worthy? I think it's an interesting idea, but I don't know how much different. Okay, hold on. It is absolutely different having Juju Smith-Schuster on the field than it is having DeAndre Hopkins on the field. DeAndre Hopkins is an absolute murderer, even at this stage in his career. He can be. What's the old phrase? I won't ever be as good as I once was, but I can be as good once as I ever was. That's DeAndre Hopkins. That's DeAndre Hopkins to this day. Juju Smith-Schuster is not as dangerous as DeAndre Hopkins, but They play similar games. They are thicker wide receivers that aren't drastically tall. They make the catch when the ball is there. DeAndre Hopkins has an insane catch radius, one that Juju Smith-Schuster simply does not. And more or less at this stage in their careers, that's kind of the difference between the two. I think that DeAndre Hopkins is faster than Juju, but I don't know that it's necessarily stunningly faster. I think that Juju Smith-Schuster is good at finding holes in a zone, but I don't think he's as talented at it as Nuke Hopkins. So as long as you have one of them on the field, that should draw interest away from Xavier Worthy. Not deep threat interest, but still, you can't afford to triple team Travis Kelce, double team Travis Kelce, and have two people over the top of Xavier Worthy. You're going to have to account for someone that can catch the ball on the field like Juju Smith-Schuster or DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe the place where this becomes an absolute game changer for the Kansas City Chiefs, because it could. I'm not saying that the Chiefs offense is suddenly going to be back on track for Patrick Mahomes to have a 5,000-yard season, but he could get the pace. Because when you have a zone buster like Travis Kelce, and you have a zone buster like DeAndre Hopkins, and you throw into the mix Xavier Worthy. Look, for as good as Rashee Rice was before he went down, he was winning as Rashee Rice. He was not winning as a guy that was diagnosing the defense. DeAndre Hopkins diagnoses the defense. DeAndre Hopkins knows exactly what it is they're trying to do, and DeAndre Hopkins knows how to beat it. Rashee Rice was not to that stage in his career yet. Maybe he'll get there, but he was not there yet. What this could end up becoming, and I hate making the comparisons because, quite frankly, the comparison, I'll just say it. You remember those Patriots offenses that were just unstoppable? Do you remember the Peyton Manning Broncos offense that was just unstoppable? They weren't done with absolute freaks except for the one season with Randy Moss. That was done with absolute freakitude. Most of those offenses were unstoppable because of veteran guys who knew, maybe not that they were going to get 40 yards on a given play, but they knew how to get 12. They knew how to get open. They knew how to make the catch. Maybe they didn't run a 4.2 40. The Kansas City Chiefs have a guy that runs a 4.2 140. And now they have Juju Smith-Schuster, they have DeAndre Hopkins, and they have Travis Kelce, who are all very good at finding a way to make a catch. This offense, it's just one addition. But it could be an addition that ends up sending this offense into a different realm. I'm not going to forecast that. I'm not going to predict that. I'm not going to tell you that's absolutely what's going to happen, but the potential is absolutely 1,000% there. When you take into account also that the running game is suddenly just moving forward. Kareem Hunt's not going to break off a 50-yard run, but you're not getting him in the backfield either. He's going to be 4 yards downfield. Now all of a sudden, your linebackers have to be very close to the line of scrimmage. Your linebacker's first step has to be forward. You cannot afford to bail out. That changes things. You have someone as dangerous, and I'm going to use the word dangerous, as Mecole Hardman with the jet sweep stuff. Now, all of a sudden, your linebackers are in a blender because I have jet sweep motion. I have a fake jet sweep, fake handoff to Kareem Hunt, and now I'm just lobbing it over your defensive front seven, to either DeAndre Hopkins or Travis Kelce, who's 8 yards deep. No one's going to be there. No one will be there. So that is an interesting way that this offense is going to, Andy Reid's absolutely going to exploit that. The question with which I'm going to end here is Brett Veach done? I plan on making another video at some point asking this question. Maybe Brett Veach will not have answered it by then, but I'm not sure he's done at wide receiver. I'm not positive. There's going to be fire sales around the NFL, but also an article broke today. Apparently Travon Walker is going to be available for a 4th-round pick. Travon Walker he has not lived up to expectations of being the number 1 overall pick. That much is true. That much is undoubtable. And I can't defend the fact that he was the number 1 overall pick. But Travon Walker is 6'5", 272 pounds. Remember, 6'5", 272. With a 4.5 140-yard dash. 6'5", 272 pounds was this close to running a 4.4. He has 35.5-inch arms, 10 3/4-inch hands, 35.5-inch vertical jump, 10-foot-3-inch broad jump. Absolute beast. Now, he's a former number 1 overall pick. If you're not familiar with him, he was the number 1 overall pick in 2022. We're not talking 2013. We're not talking 2017. We're not talking Patrick Mahomes' draft class, from which seemingly every first-round pick besides Patrick Mahomes has been made available in free agency or trade. We're talking about 2022. It is 1,000% possible that a guy like this just hasn't put it together yet. I feel bad even saying that. 2022, as a rookie, 3.5 sacks. Okay, he's a rookie, he's learning on the job. Disappointing for number 1 overall. 2023, he had 10 sacks. So far this year, he has 5 sacks. What it is that is making a player like Travon Walker available for a 4th-round pick, I don't know. But teams are going to be putting out fire sales. And I think that Brett Veach could be in position to capitalize on these, whether it is on a wide receiver or something else. Offensive tackle, cornerback, now with Jalen Watson going down. He loves his safeties, despite the fact that he's got 30 safeties that can play defense right now. So it's hard to say exactly what, and I think Brett Veach is one of these crafty guys that is also going to take into account the future, right? Are the Kansas City Chiefs able to maintain Trey Smith? That's the big question now. What about Nick Bolton? Well, what if you can acquire someone in a trade still on their rookie contract that a team's simply trying to move on from, and they're having a fire sale? Anyway, guys, that's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button and stick around for more Kansas City Chiefs-based content in the future. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.